New at 6, a TV6 Investigates special report reflecting on a near tragedy. Nearly 1 year after a student pulled a gun inside a classroom, North Scott Schools administration is learning from the incident. Students go back to class a week from Friday.
And the memory of what happened last year will, of course, be on their minds. But when they do get back to class, they will notice changes have been made. Question is, what kind of changes? Well, our Jenna Jackson and Chris Carter sat down with the superintendent and talked to him about that. Tonight, we begin a week-long special series, Sense of Safety.
In the year since the incident, the North Scott School District has looked at its safety plan and evaluated how they responded. And Jenna, they recognize that changes had to happen.
Right, Chris. The district's changes are small, but as the superintendent told us, the staff at North Scott Junior High School kept a horrible situation from becoming any worse. 2 minutes.
And it went by so quick.
That's how long it took to change several lives.
The community has not fully moved on. There are still victims out there dealing with this, processing it every day.
It took only 2 minutes for 13-year-old Luke Andrews to point a gun at his teacher's face and pull the trigger. The safety was on and the gun didn't fire.
And at that point, my mind said, oh my gosh, he just tried to shoot me, and I better not let that happen again.
It's been almost a year since that happened inside North Scott Junior High, but emotions are still raw.
Very, very scary. I hope no one ever has to go through anything like that.
And for North Scott Schools Superintendent Joe Studding, he's still in disbelief.
You don't think something like that would happen here at North Scott, small town Iowa, where, we're made up of a number of just smaller farm communities, and, you then realize you become a national statistic.
We asked Studding to reflect on August 29th and the several months following. He also told us what he's learned.
I'm not sure anything is shocking to the district. You have different emotions over the whole process, but our real concern as a district is how do we support our staff and our students and our families.
After the incident, a group of district leaders spoke to each classroom at the junior high. One student has left a lasting impact on Studding.
I do remember one girl in one of the rooms saying, well, can you promise this would never happen again? And the answer is no. But I would be lying to her, and what I said, I'd be lying to all of you if I said, oh, this will never happen again, because we could never guarantee that. That's a hard thing to tell a 14-year-old, a 13-year-old.
He also calls the actions of the classroom teacher, Dawn Spring, heroic, reflecting on how she calmly handled Luke Andrews when he pulled the gun out, talking him down and getting him in the hallway.
She has always held strong. You always wait for when is the realization going to kick in, and she is a very strong individual who has been able to handle the situation, handled it great that day, and has handled it great every day since, including all the way through the trial.
As for the boys' trial,
for me, that was the emotional part, is knowing they were reliving this, and then they have to second guess, could I have done something different? Should I have done something different? Could I have noticed something? What could have happened?
Chris, they're taking what happened and using it as a learning experience.
Yeah, and that learning experience, they're processing it and they're moving forward.
We have a phenomenal safety committee that's been meeting well before the state required the safety plans this year, before this incident, that's always met for years. So we prepare for that and how you would react and how you go into lockdowns and all those things. But you also learn a lot from that situation.
One of the most important discoveries: see something, say something. Details in the trial showed Andrews had mentioned bringing a gun to school to a few students and in emails on his school account. Further, the morning of the incident, he showed the gun in his backpack to a friend on the bus, but no one reported it.
How do we make sure that all of our students know the safety of people come first? It is not snitching, it's not telling on a friend, it's none of that. Safety always comes first. You must let somebody know.
To make the students feel more comfortable, the district sped up the rollout of the P3 tip system, allowing students to anonymously submit their concerns to the district using a smartphone app. As Studding reflects, he knows some of the district's actions could have been better. Like, instead of calling 911, they called the school resource officer directly.
Now, if we look back, hindsight's 20/20, and it worked out great for us. 911 should have been called. Now, it would have created a much different control situation with us if 911's called, because all of you get notified quicker than I can notify families.
While the district has learned a lot, this new school year is about supporting students and staff and beginning the process of moving forward.
Jenna Jackson
and Chris Carter, TV6 News.
So the district officials did tell Jenna and Chris that they realize that they have to reflect back on the past, but their focus really is on moving forward and helping the whole community move forward with this. Tomorrow night at 6, they're going to show us the new security measures at North Scott that are being used now to increase their sense of safety. Also, right now on our TV6 News app, you can watch the entire interview with Superintendent Joe Studding.
Back now with a TV6 Investigates special report, making changes to prevent tragedy. School districts know the risks all too well, and one district is doing what it can to prevent a repeat. It was less than a year ago, a student pulled out a gun in a North Scott school classroom, pulled the trigger. No one was hurt because the safety was on.
Now, since then, the school district has made changes to safety and security policies. Our Jenna Jackson and Chris Carter show us what some of those are in part 2 of our special series, Sense of Safety.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Luke Andrews, guilty of the lesser included offense.
We're not going to let this
assault with
define
intent
us. We're not
to
going to
commit
let
serious
this
injury
change
to
our education as a result of what he did.
But it is shaping some future plans for the North Scott School District.
Last year on August 31st, it didn't take long for then 12-year-old Luke Andrews to impact several people after he put a gun in his teacher's face.
Now we're learning how the district is implementing some policy changes from Superintendent Joe Studding.
I don't think we did any knee-jerk reactions, oh, we have to do this, we have to do that. I think we allowed our safety committee to analyze the recommendations, where we're at, make the changes as a district that we needed to make. But most of the changes we made, we were well on our way to making anyway.
Rolling out the P3 smartphone app for anonymous reporting was an immediate response, plus pushing the see something, say something policy.
In addition to that, the district continues to monitor students' online activity. Right now, students get a school-issued Chromebook and a school email account. It's meant to help students with schoolwork, but there is misuse.
Testimony in Andrew's trial showed during class he was looking at images of guns. He also sent students messages about bringing a gun to school. Studding says the district uses a program to alert the IT department if a student uses specific words. That includes anything about violence to suicide to inappropriate words. It was used prior to the incident.
But it's not just about policing students, it's also about building connections.
How can we right away at the beginning of the year start developing relationships, not only amongst themselves, but also with our staff?
On the security front, there's a new way to buzz guests into the building. At the junior high, guests will be buzzed into the building, then buzzed through the lobby into the school.
This summer we've added to their camera system, and we upgraded it from an older camera system to a better camera system. All of our buildings now have camera systems.
Meanwhile, Studding says one change is controversial: lockdowns versus evacuations. The junior high went on lockdown after the incident last year.
Well, that situation would even in the future justify a lockdown. So you know it's under control, but yet there's still a lot of investigating, so you don't need kids in the hallways. You want to make sure, our assumption is it's one person, but you still want to check lockers. You want to check the electronic footprint of this child to make sure other things weren't involved.
But Studding wants teachers to think twice and says he doesn't want specific rules in place.
Not to say you always do this, because you won't always do this. You must react. That's going to create the safest, save the most amount of people in extreme circumstances versus saying, nope, we always march down this hallway.
Another change, Studding says in any incident where the superintendent is at the scene, someone else will take charge of the district for the time being.
It's hard for myself or any one person to concentrate on a crisis and the rest of the district at the same time, because you have too many questions and decisions to be made.
And in the case another incident occurs, there must be a crisis manager. Most likely, it would be the superintendent. But Studding says if he's not available, someone else will handle the scene, including questions from parents and journalists.
Most importantly, though, Studding wants the district to march forward.
We never allowed this situation to define our school year last year. You could easily do that. You could have a horrible year after a negative situation. Our staff in all of our buildings in that junior high never allowed that situation to define their year.
And maintain staff and students' sense of safety. Jenna Jackson.
And Chris Carter, TV6 News.
Now, the district is also urging the students to use the see something, say something motto, and they want kids to understand that it doesn't mean they're ratting out a friend. It means that they could prevent a tragedy and even save lives.
To read more on how North Scott schools reacted and responded to their incident, our special reports are on our TV6 News app right now.
New at 6 tonight, talking about tragedy. It's no longer if, but when a violent act will happen in communities all across the country and right here. When it does, the conversations with children are critical, whether they're directly involved or not. In part 3 of our special report, Sense of Safety, Chris Carter has some guidelines on how these conversations should go.
Paula, experts say the conversations can set the stage for a child to heal, and in some cases, if done correctly, could prevent more tragedy. They are conversations parents should be thinking about as more kids head back to school. They are the scenes playing out all across America. Mass shootings, acts of violence becoming so common they are hard to avoid.
Hurry up! Hurry up! Run!
Scenes like these are becoming the new sad reality for children. The images can be overwhelming, even traumatic. Experts say what is happening can be hard for a child to understand, especially when that tragedy happens somewhere a child thinks is safe, like a school.
We're so used to seeing or hearing things that it doesn't even bother us anymore.
Molly Schmelzer is a licensed mental health counselor specializing in child and adolescent trauma. She says before, during, and after a tragedy, conversation is so important. And it doesn't have to be a shooting. It can be the death of a classmate, a bomb threat, or a scene like we saw 1 year ago at North Scott Junior High School when a classmate pulled a gun out in the middle of class, pointed it at a teacher, and pulled the trigger, forgetting that the safety was on.
You're honest with them. You tell them what happened. You tell them how you're feeling about it, because when trauma happens, it happens to the whole family.
A child's age can change the conversation. For younger children, start by listening. Ask them what they've heard.
It looks like, talk to me. Tell me what you're feeling. It's not, you need to do this, this, and this. That's not the time to do it. When there's a trauma happening, when there's a tragedy happening, it's about the emotion. You have to be able to express the emotion. You have to be safe emotionally before you can start to think logically.
Don't share everything. Only provide information that the child needs. Base that on what they ask. Also, keep your conversations simple. Statements like, there was a shooting and many people died. Death tolls and gun types aren't as important for younger kids. Also, speak in their language. Remember, younger children don't understand the magnitude of a situation and are more emotional than verbal, and experts say that is okay.
We have to let the child experience it. The worst thing you can do is tell a child there's nothing to cry about, it's done, it's over, don't worry. You know, these are things that are saying your feelings don't matter, your emotions don't matter. And if we teach children that, then we teach them to shut down and not connect, and they become desensitized to violence.
Schmelzer says conversations with older kids are more direct. Keep it simple, but address their concerns. Give them more information. They've likely already heard it. But no matter the child's age, remember, you cannot promise them tragedy won't happen to them or a loved one.
You don't say, oh, don't worry, you don't have anything to worry about, because they do. You can't promise them that it won't happen, but you can promise them that you're going to do everything you can to be there for them when something like this does happen.
And if a tragedy like this does happen, don't ignore it. Even though adults may not be surprised by another mass shooting, we should still show the kids that emotions are okay.
If you act like you don't know about it or you're not bothered by it, your children are going to pick up on the discomfort that you have in lying to them. And they're also not going to learn that it's okay to be scared.
Chris, thanks. Now, something else to keep in mind when having these talks is to have them one-on-one with each child. That way you can have a private conversation and they can really come out about their fears and concerns. A role that is gaining more and more importance these days, school resource officers. And tonight we continue our Sense of Safety series of reports.
That's right. TV6's Courtney Spinelli talked to members of law enforcement about the job of school resource officers in schools everywhere now.
And Paula, David, while school resource officers, or SROs, aren't required, more local schools are bringing them in. The veteran officers placed in these roles go through rigorous training, and they're prepared for much more than just a major safety situation. I got the chance to meet one school's new resource officer as he prepares for the school year.
Something different, a little more challenging.
and I'm looking forward to the change.
Sergeant Michael Meyer is taking on a new challenge this year. Each day, he'll walk these halls and interact with students of all ages. But that comes with a lot of responsibility.
You know, I want that confidence in them to be able to walk up and tell me if there's a problem with school, problem at home. You know, not necessarily all in school, but at home, in school.
After 27 years on the force, Sergeant Meyer is Durant's new school resource officer. Actually, their first.
I mean, they're trained in the front line. They're experts in this.
Meyer is also an active shooter training instructor and recently attended NASRO courses. He's prepared for the day-to-day interaction with students, but also recognizes he's there to protect them.
Unfortunately, some of the changes that have happened in our society have not been as positive as what we would like. And the school resource officer is now a necessity in every school.
You can spend thousands and thousands of dollars on all the security systems, but actually having a person here live that's connected to just moments away from getting the rest of the cavalry, so to speak, here if needed, it's invaluable.
And while they're there for protection, that's not their only role. Mac Hardy, a former teacher and retired police officer, says this training includes mental health, active shooter, diversity, and a handful of other opportunities.
We can't do this alone with just the schools. Law enforcement certainly cannot do this alone. When you have a team of the law enforcement, schools, and the community working together, well, it makes for a much safer environment.
Just weeks ago, Hardy says NASRO trained nearly 700 officers to prepare for the everyday and the unthinkable.
So many of these school shootings, there's been leakage where somebody knew about it, but they just didn't take it seriously and they didn't say anything. That communication between the community and law enforcement is so vital.
Hardy hopes more schools will follow lead and recognize the importance of this extra layer of protection.
Part of the thing about having a school resource officer is prevention.
Armed with defense and an understanding of the kids they serve. And Sheriff Lane tells me prevention is key for these officers. In the event someone comes to the school with bad intentions, the officers are trained and ready to meet them with armor and a superior weapon. Case in point, as you just heard a few minutes ago, former school resource officer Mark Dallas was recognized for preventing a possible tragedy. David?
All right, thanks, Courtney. According to NASRO, all officers in their program go through at least 40 hours of specialized training before becoming an SRO, and that's on top of their many years of being an officer on the street.
Developing tonight, something that may be on your back-to-school shopping list, or maybe you didn't even know it existed, a bulletproof backpack. It's a national trend, and yes, it's here in the Quad Cities. TV6's Monse Ricosta found a local store selling these special inserts for the backpacks. Monse?
Paula, with the inserts ranging from $150 to $200, it could be a high price for some families, but for others, it's a price to pay for safety.
Protect our babies, and that's what matters.
Bulletproof backpack manufacturers reporting a spike in sales, as much as 200% as kids head back to campus.
Seems like 20, 30 years ago, you didn't hear about big shootings in schools like this or anywhere really, so it's a problem. Definitely a problem, especially when I have a 7-year-old and then she's gonna be in school in 4 or 5 years. So it's scary as a parent.
The issue some have is the price. Davenport Guns sells bulletproof inserts with the cheapest option at $150.
I think a lot of the students that we have in this area have a hard time with school supplies, and even the teachers, let alone buying $100 and some backpack.
I mean, I have 3 kids myself, so buying 3 that's $600 if they were $200, so that's a pretty good chunk of money. That's a car payment, a mortgage payment, something like that.
Others see it as a small price to pay to save your life.
This is just a really easy, for the most part, inexpensive way to save your life, depending on the value you place on your life. If the odds are bullet holes, $200 is pretty cheap.
Parents may want other alternatives to school safety before turning to bulletproof shields for their children.
I think metal detectors maybe, and more security in the schools, which is sad too.
Before buying an insert or bulletproof backpack, you should check if your child's school can carry one into the classroom. Bettendorf, East Moline, United Township, Rock Island, and Silva school districts have similar policies requiring their junior high and high school students to put their backpacks and purses away during the school day.
I want to say thank you. Now, these bulletproof inserts are designed to protect against most handgun bullets and to slow down higher caliber shots, but that is not guaranteed.
We need to be aware. We can't just hide and say, hey, you know, that's not going to happen in our neighborhood. That's not going to happen in our part of town, right? It does happen in all parts of town.
New at 6, we continue our special series, Sense of Safety. As kids start this new school year, many of their schools have new security measures. Most districts have active shooter training. And with 3 mass shootings just this month, the question rings out, what can we do?
Now, last year, our area had 2 high-profile cases involving a student bringing a gun to school. That includes the attempted murder trial of 13-year-old Luke Andrews.
Our Jenna Jackson joins us now with a deeper look into all of these questions. Jenna?
Paula, David, debates following violence in our nation and right here in our backyard typically involve mental health and gun control. And while there could be several different ways to curb mass shootings, I wanted to know what each of us could do right now that would make a difference.
A picture is worth 1,000 words. We use them to remember moments in times of joy and times spent with our loved ones. But lately, many pictures have also shown our country's trauma and anguish. This is just a snapshot of the aftermath of school shootings in America. Memorials like this are becoming a norm. While a mass school shooting hasn't happened in our region, we've come close. This is Matthew Milby. In May of last year, Milby was taken down by school resource officer Mark Dallas after shots rang out in Dixon High School. Milby was later found unfit to stand trial. And this is Luke Andrews in his attempted murder trial. In August 2018, at 12 years old, Andrews brought a gun to school, pointed it in his teacher's face, and pulled the trigger. It didn't fire. We've held back showing Andrew's full face, partly because he's a minor.
It's hard to imagine a young child at age 12, 13, 14 years old doing something so horrific to our kids and our community. But reality is here.
And while there's a growing movement to not give a suspect or shooter any fame, experts say it's important in trying to understand why this is happening.
What we forget sometimes in relationship to young offenders is who they really are and what they really look like and appear to be. We're not looking for people who are constantly having issues and problems. It could be your person to your neighbor to your left or right of your home.
Gary Thrapp runs Beyond the Baseline, an after-school program. He also works with troubled youth. He says violence and crime ranging from theft and robbery to gang violence to even school shootings affect most kids in our community, whether they are directly involved or not.
While us as adults are arguing, whether it's politics or whether it's just opinions, our kids are scared. You know, they're listening to us and our temperature and rhetoric, and they're just bottom line scared.
So how did we get to this point? Licensed therapist Molly Schmelzer has one idea.
What we've done wrong is leave children to their own devices when they needed guidance.
Devices like phones and computers, TVs, and radios. School resource officer Jim Miller agrees.
They're more desensitized and numb to some of the violence and the blood, the guts, the gore that you see on some of these video games, and the meaning behind some of these songs that are going through their heads are becoming a part of the reality of their life.
In fact, a 2007 study in the Cambridge Handbook of Violent Behavior and Aggression shows repeated exposure to violence can cause a child to think or plan aggressive actions without having any negative emotions. To challenge this reality, experts say we need to monitor what images kids see on a daily basis.
Obviously, we can't keep it all from them, but they don't need to know so much that it's destroying and ruining childhoods.
Miller, Schmelzer, and Thrapp say investing in our youth is another way to address this multifaceted issue.
We got to look beyond that politics stuff and get down to the core issues of how we're taking care of our kids and what we're communicating and how we're communicating to our kids because they're listening.
Every day, Deputy Miller interacts with students in the Riverdale School District.
A simple high five and a fist bump to a a child that's been struggling or had a bad day the night before at home is huge, because we now become the smile that we put on their face.
He says that's one way to gain trust with a child or teen.
Letting kids know, hey, you're more than just a student. You're a person who we care about.
If you don't talk with them, they're going to learn from kids at school. And then they won't be able to know necessarily what's right and what's wrong.
And making sure they know the importance of see something, say something.
Snitching is not being a good community member. And when you see something happen that's not right and you let adults or let the police in on it, you're not a snitch, you're a hero.
It's through these interactions
We got to fix this and work hard towards it.
Miller, Schmelzer, and Thrapp say we can start to paint that picture worth 1,000 words. A sense of safety.
Now, we know these aren't the only answers to this problem, but our experts say simple actions can go a long way. And even if we only make a difference to one child, they can go forward to be that positive change for another. Paula?
All right, Jenna, thank you. Now, all this week, we have shown you several stories on the different aspects of school safety and violence in our society. You can watch more and read more on each of these stories right now on our news app.